Why am I always waiting on dispatch? On this episode of Driven Too Far, we're going to pull back the curtain just to see what the holdup is. Hello, I'm Andrew Winkler with Chief Carriers, and this is Driven Too Far, the truth about trucking, a podcast that helps over-the-road truck drivers balance career and family. Welcome back to Driven Too Far again. On this episode, I want to talk about what in the world is going on behind the scenes in dispatch. Man, I'm tired of waiting around for them to call me back with a load. Why can't they get their act together? So I thought it was a relevant topic. I know drivers worry about this all the time. And when you're sitting there at that receiver waiting for the next load to come through, or maybe dispatch told you to move down to the truck stop and call back in an hour type thing. Gosh, we've all been through that. I can't even count how many times. It's super frustrating. And when you don't know from a driver's seat of what's going on behind the scenes in dispatch, it just seems like nobody's got their act together. It's like, what are these people doing? They knew I was going to be here for the last 24, 48 hours, whatever that looks like. But I want to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit to make sure you understand there's processes that have to happen behind the scenes before any loads can be booked. So let's go ahead and kick it off a little bit. First, I want to talk about the difference between contract freight and spot market freight. And we've talked about this before, but just to refresh your memory, contract freight is the direct freight you have from customers. There's no broker involved. There's no third party, anything like that. It's your company talking directly to that particular shipper or customer, and you have an arrangement for freight, maybe so many loads a week in certain lanes and for certain rates. That stuff's already been negotiated out. Usually those contracts are good for a year at a time, maybe longer if your sales department's really good at negotiating and things. But that's what contract freight is. And that's what we all want. That's what we're chasing. That's what we're after. We want those direct relationships with those shippers and the customers. We don't necessarily want to have a broker in the middle of it because if we're being honest, it just makes it more difficult and takes longer with things. But unfortunately, spot market freight, broker type freight has a position in the industry and it has a purpose. So let's talk about why that is. If I send a truck out to a certain point in the country and I don't have any contract or customer freight out of that area, I need to do something to get you loaded back into a normal traffic lane for our company. So that's really where the broker freight comes in. It's like a one-time, one and done deal. It's transactional, it's per load. So I don't have any long-term standing contracts with that particular broker. I've got a truck at A and I need to get him to B and you have a load that matches that. Let's do a one-time deal. We'll negotiate a rate behind the scenes and see if we can't get our truck back into a better place where we can put more customer freight on you. So that's the purpose of spot rate. It's not meant from a trucking company's perspective. We don't want a high percentage of spot freight because we know the broker's taking a cut out of the middle of that freight, right? The broker has the direct relationship with the customer. So he's taking a chunk out of the middle. It could be anywhere from 10, 15, 20%, maybe higher that he's not passing through to the carrier. So that's why it's a one and done. We don't want to do a ton of those type things. But that's what you find on the load boards. When you go to the truck stop, and I'm assuming something here. I haven't been to a truck stop for a while, but I'm assuming they still have TV screens with load boards, near the driver's lounge and stuff where a lot of the independent drivers, let's say the true owner operators out there that maybe own one truck or a couple trucks, that's a lot of time how they operate is they operate off the load boards. It's spot load after spot load after spot load to keep themselves going. It can work. They have to be very disciplined, but just remember that broker's always taking a chunk out of that for them. So the best thing even a one truck operator could do is find yourself customer freight at least one way. So wherever your hometown is there something close by, a manufacturing facility, a distribution center, something like that, where you could get in and have a conversation with the traffic or the shipping department about what freight do they have on a consistent basis that with you or 1, 2, 10 trucks, whatever that looks like, could service that lane for them. And you develop a contract around that. So that's the ultimate goal. It's not always reality though. And that's very difficult when you don't have the power of size meaning the truck lines with the mega carriers, of course, and anybody probably with 50 to 100 trucks or more has better negotiating power than you do as a true independent or a single operator like that. So anyways, back at it. We're on the spot market. We've got to find something to move you from where you're at to get you back into a good traffic lane for us. Why the heck does that take so long? Well, there's some things that have to go on behind the scenes. It's not as easy as just calling the 800 number on the load board and telling that broker, yes, I want it, send it over, and we're going to do it. First of all, we have to look at things. The dispatcher has to know, is it going to pay enough for me to move the truck? Does that particular load or freight match what I have? Is it dry freight? Is it reefer? Is it flatbed? Is it something that I can haul on the equipment that I have available? And does it move you back towards what you would consider your normal freight lane? So that's really what we're after. Is we don't just want to shotgun trucks all over the country. That's not what we're looking for. We want to get you back into freight lanes where we know there's contract freight, we know that pays better, and keep you on stuff like that. So one of the first things we have to do is if we find a load we like on the load board, we have to go into our system. Is this a broker we've hauled for in the past? So if they're already set up in our system, that's going to speed it up quite a bit, meaning we've done some of the background checks on these people and things like that, and we're satisfied that we could continue to do business with them. Now, if we haven't, then there's going to be a credit process, right? We got to know that this broker, who are they? How long have they been in business? Can they pay their bills on time? Because there's no reason to go move somebody's freight for somebody if they can't pay the freight bill. So that has to happen. And that typically your dispatcher's probably not doing that. They probably have to send a request to finance, credit department, whatever you have in your organization. But somebody's going to have to pull the history on that broker and then run a credit check. So that can take a little bit of time there. And then there's the carrier paperwork setup whole thing that needs to go on. If this is a new broker, again, that you haven't hauled for before, is we have paperwork from the carrier side that we have to share with them because they want to know that we have authority to move their freight, and vice versa. We want to know that that broker has the authority to physically broker that freight out, that they have the right credentials to do that too. So it's both parties trading paperwork. Sometimes there's a contract involved in that. It means somebody's got to look through the paperwork and make sure all the boxes are checked and things look good that way. Then if you get that far, and finance approves that broker for us to haul, there probably has to be a rate negotiation, and that would probably be between the dispatcher and the broker themselves. Of course, the broker is going to try to lowball it, make as much money as they can on the load, and your dispatcher likely has some tools that they use in the system like truckstop.com or a DAT, where it can give the dispatcher some of the average rates in that particular lane. So that's where the negotiation process comes in. How about the timeliness of the pickup and delivery? Does it work for you, the driver? Can you get there before 5 o'clock before they quit shipping today? What about the delivery? Is it a reasonable, you've got a 1,000-mile run. Does that mean we've got 48 hours to make it, or a 1,000-mile run, but they can't take it for 4 or 5 days on the calendar, So we don't want to sit on a load for several days. So that's one of the next things that has to be worked out. And then probably the last thing we're checking out is once we get the paperwork from the broker, they shoot us over an email, if you will, with a document on it. It's probably got all the details on it for the load. So we're just double checking all that. Is it of legal weight? Things like that. Is it going to fit on our trailer? What about the fine print? So one of the things that's interesting nowadays is that transportation happens so fast that with the technology that you have in the trucks with the cameras on our phones or maybe a tablet in your truck, the broker is almost demanding immediate proof of delivery once you make your delivery and the receiver signs your bill of lading. Ideally, they want you to take a snapshot of that so they can capture the bill of lading with the signature on it for the approval. You send it to your dispatcher. Your dispatcher has to turn around and send it to that broker. And they have they're getting kind of dirty and sneaky with some things, but they have some things in the fine print on these agreements that say you agree to get us this signed bill of lading within a couple hours of delivery or 24 hours of delivery. Or if you don't do that, we're going to start fining you, or we're going to start deducting money off the original agreement for doing those things. And they do that because it's a cash flow thing, right? They want fast turnaround on their end too. The broker does, because they have to take your document that's signed, turn around and give it to their customer so they can receive payment. And then ultimately they pay us, the carrier. So anyways, the fine print can be a killer. And that's one of the things too that, the dispatcher's doing behind the scene when they're looking through the fine details, last minute details of everything. If we come across a broker that wants to fine us for every little thing, driver didn't call in, driver didn't do this right, do that right, driver didn't call me for dispatch, all those little things are probably on that brokerage agreement. We won't do business with them, right? Because it's like, at what point it feels like they're just finding ways to fine you and lower what they're paying you. So that's not who we want to do business with. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. All these steps have to happen in the background. Unfortunately, I wish, when you call in empty, that next load's ready and waiting for you, your next dispatch. That's certainly not always the case, especially in a slower freight market. But now you kind of understand what your dispatch team, your finance team, and everybody else in the building there is. They're not goofing around. I promise you that. They are trying to get you going as fast as possible. But there's a process that has to be followed, and we have a lot of boxes to check to make sure that we can get paid for the freight that we're hauling, and paid in a timely manner. So there you have it. That's kind of the end of it. What's happening behind the scenes in dispatch and why they take so dang long sometimes. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of Driven Too Far. We have a ton of resources available to you. Check out the show notes.